A gray dawn settled over the ruined port of Hamburg, its waters carrying the bitter scent of fuel, rust, and a nation finally brought to its knees. Smoke drifted lazily above the half-sunken U-boats, once fearsome predators. Now quiet memorials of a war that had consumed their crews faster than the steel could be built. Along the cracked waterfront, a line of captured German naval officers stood with hands clasped behind their backs, their faces drained of the authority that had once defined them. Medals still adorned their tunics, but the weight of defeat pressed heavier than nickel or brass. Among them was Admiral Ernst Keller, a stern figure in his early 50s with sharp eyes and a posture that refused to collapse, even when the Reich around him had already done so. Years of responsibility had left their mark. Keller had carried the burden of the U-boat war, signing off on patrols he knew might never return. Next to him stood Vice Admiral Otto Drexler, slightly older, his neatly trimmed beard hiding the lines of age. He had once lectured cadets that Germany's naval willpower could outlast any blockade. Now, surveying the shattered harbor, he realized his speeches were artifacts of a vanished world. A younger officer, Conrad Wall, barely 40 yet already weathered by years of command, watched the smoke curl upward, trying to steady his breathing. None spoke. Their silence was not loyalty but exhaustion. Orders came in clipped English from American soldiers just beyond the rail line. The Admirals had been processed, registered, and questioned in a style perfected by 1945. Now they were instructed to move toward a waiting convoy. Keller exchanged glances with Drexler, acknowledging what they both feared but refused to voice: the Americans might treat them harshly, perhaps brutally. For years, the propaganda ministry had warned them that capture meant humiliation, starvation, and a stripped dignity, yet the Americans gestured without threat, without gloating, almost resisting the expectations Keller had carried for months. The convoy rolled out of Hamburg's ruins toward a makeshift airfield. Through the cracked windows of the truck, the officers saw civilians scavenging among collapsed buildings. The war had flattened distinctions. Even high-ranking officers now slid toward anonymity. Keller's thoughts drifted to numbers that had haunted every naval briefing: 783 U-boats lost, tens of thousands of sailors gone, and supply lines so thin that many ships never sailed. The Marine had once envisioned itself as Germany's shield against the world. By 1945, it had become another casualty of delusion. When the convoy stopped, the officers were escorted onto a military transport plane. Keller noticed Wall clutch the armrest tightly. He had never feared the open ocean, yet something about rising into the sky as a prisoner filled him with dread. Keller gave him a small nod, the same he once gave junior officers before a dangerous patrol. Not reassurance, merely recognition of shared uncertainty. As the plane lifted above the ruins, Germany shrank beneath them, cities reduced to pale grids, interrupted by blackened scars. Hours passed. The aircraft interior hummed with metallic monotony, punctuated by the occasional creak of the fuselage. Drexler tried to rest, but his mind returned to rumors from other captured officers. Some said the Americans obeyed the Geneva Convention meticulously. Others claimed this was propaganda to disarm morale. He had no way to know which awaited them. He touched the inside pocket of his coat where a small notebook rested, containing final entries written before capture. On one page, he had scrawled, "If we lose, let me at least keep my humanity." He had feared the Allies would take it from him. Never imagining how much his own government had already stolen, daylight faded into a muted horizon, and the officers glimpsed a coastline ahead. Lights dotted the shore in neat rows, nothing like the blackouts Germany had endured. The aircraft descended toward an American base, its runway glowing like a pale river under the night sky. Keller braced for shouts, humiliation, or brutality, but when the doors opened, the American guards approached with professional restraint. One gestured simply, "This way, gentlemen," as though addressing foreign delegates rather than defeated enemies. The admirals exchanged uncertain glances. The air smelled of grass and unfamiliar blossoms, a gentle, ordinary fragrance that made Wall swallow hard. Keller studied the camp layout: fences, watchtowers, tidy paths, the faint murmur of distant laughter from servicemen off duty. The normality unsettled him more than hostility would have. Drexler whispered, "If this is a performance, it is remarkably convincing." Keller said nothing, a quiet unease coiling inside him. Nothing resembled the horrors they had been promised. Instead, there was order, warmth, and a disquieting sense that the Americans were not acting at all. Inside the barracks, a young American lieutenant handed them packets of blankets, toiletries, and a brief note outlining camp regulations. Mundane, even modest, yet the very ordinariness felt surreal. Drexler held the blanket in his hands, clean and soft, and murmured, "Why treat us like this?" The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of soil and early summer. Keller paused at the threshold, sensing that whatever lay ahead would not resemble the nightmare he expected. The captive stepped outside the next morning into morning fog rolling over the fields of Maryland. Wooden barracks, swept gravel paths, silent watchtowers, and a distant barn tucked against a slope of green all spoke of an ordinary, functioning world. A rooster crowed. An American guard walked by carrying a steaming cup of coffee. Drexler, months without warmth, felt a jolt of envy. Even Wall's eyes lingered on the rising steam as though it signaled another world. "Welcome to Maryland, gentlemen," an American lieutenant said, crisp, professional, devoid of triumph. At the intake table, crates of supplies were stacked neatly. Soldiers moved with attention, not indifference. One handed Drexler a slip of paper and saluted out of protocol, not respect. Drexler hesitated, then nodded stiffly. The soldier smiled as if they had shared a secret. In the mess hall, the smell of fresh bread, roasted meat, and real butter struck them with bewilderment. Keller tasted the stew and froze. It was not merely good, it was better than anything since 1943. Wall murmured, "This cannot be real." Around them, American guards chatted casually, reading newspapers, laughing quietly. The normality felt almost cruel against the chaos they had endured. Yet beneath it lay confusion, doubt, and an unsettling truth. Their captors were behaving as if this was simply how the world worked. Drexler realized, for the first time, that mercy could exist without performance. Days passed. The Admirals became witnesses to the camp's quiet philosophy: routine, predictable generosity, structured restraint. Even disciplinary moments were measured. Keller observed that the Americans sought understanding rather than humiliation. A visiting naval officer, Commander Harris, discussed U-boat logistics and tactics, not interrogation, but perspective. Civility unsettled the Admirals. Music, letters from home, and simple routines revealed another truth: the war had ended on the battlefield, but a quieter reckoning had begun. Wall wrote to his wife about food, clean barracks, and the odd decency of their captors. Each letter was a reminder that the regime they had served had misled them. Returning to Germany months later, the Admirals encountered devastation. Fields lay untended, churches were hollowed stone, families scavenged ruins. The gulf between American captivity and German survival was stark. Keller's brother's accusation cut deeper than any battlefield wound. "You were fed well in America. We survived on boiled weeds." Yet among the ruins, small moments of rebuilding carried hope. Keller coordinated transport routes for food distribution. Drexler helped restore the Naval Academy's library. Wall taught youth groups discipline without cruelty. Each act echoed lessons learned in captivity: mercy, restraint, humanity. Keller reread his sister's letter. "The world will not remember what we believed, only how we choose to begin again." The line crystallized his understanding. Mercy, once received, demanded to be passed forward. And though Germany struggled to rise from the ashes, Keller sensed the greatest confrontation lay ahead, not with enemies or allies, but with the truth he had carried home. Captivity had changed him, reshaping his understanding of America, of war, and ultimately of himself.
Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.